Morning. This morning we had some issues with our sound system, and so the sound system was just fine. It is somehow our computer system did not transmit the sound. It did send out the video, but not the sound. And I got some messages from a few of you saying that they wanted to hear the sermon, so I thought I will re-record it or live stream it at this time, and you can join me. And one of the readings that we used today for our the readings lessons, one was from 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. This is how that reading goes. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. At that time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he could not see, was lying down in his room. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called, Samuel, Samuel. And he said, Here I am, and ran to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call, lie down again. So he went and lay down. The Lord called again, Samuel, Samuel. And then Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call you, my son, lie down again. Now Samuel did not know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel again and third time, and he got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, Go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, Speak, for your servant is listening. Then the Lord said to Samuel, See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make both ears of anyone who hears it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offerings forever. Samuel lay there until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. But Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. He said, Here I am. Eli said, What was it that he told you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you, and more also, if you hide anything from me of all that he told you. So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. Then he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a trustworthy prophet of the Lord. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I want to welcome you to this time of reflection. I'm Father Jose, priest at St. James Episcopal Church, and those of you who know me already know who I am, and it is not an issue. But today, since we had an issue with the sound system, I thought I will share my reflection one more time with you so that you guys can hear it and reflect more on these scriptures. Our Old Testament reading, if you listen to it carefully, that you would have heard a very interesting line that we ended it with, that the word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. When I read this, I thought it is nothing different now. The word of the Lord is sometimes escapes us, and the visions of the Lord escapes us. And so those who claim to be the prophets of God and those people who claim to hear the voice of the Lord sometimes are not telling the truth. Even though we have false prophets everywhere, anywhere you turn, there are people who are prophesying for God. God is not absent, just like in those days when things were said wrongly, saying that it is the Lord who was speaking. But in those days when the Lord spoke to Samuel, God was fully present. God is fully present even when things do not come to fruition, as the false prophet speak of them. In the midst of false prophecy and spiritual dryness, God chooses the one who can do his bidding. And that's what we hear in the first reading. It was not an easy call for Samuel to respond to. His charge was not simple or glorious or pleasant. He had to tell his master what he did not want to hear. I want to repeat that. Samuel's charge was to tell his boss what his boss, Eli, did not want to hear. He had to tell the truth to Eli, his master, about what God wanted him to hear. Samuel's call began with a pronouncement something like this: "On that day, I will fulfill against Eli." Remember this. Samuel's call was to tell what I'm about to read to Eli, his boss. "On that day, I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God." The reason Eli was punished is because his sons were blaspheming God and he did not restrain them. "Therefore, I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offerings forever." And I was thinking how wonderful it must have been for Samuel to tell the truth to his boss that "You messed up, Eli. You are my teacher, you are my boss, and you messed up, and you are not going to escape what the Lord has set for you in the future. Whether you like it or not, taking that from the Lord would be the right thing to do." Of course, he didn't go all that length, but the truth is, that's exactly what Samuel is telling Eli, his boss. Even though it was Eli who taught Samuel how to listen to God, Eli's family strayed from God's ways. Samuel had a call, and that was not pleasant for the moment for Eli to hear. And Eli's redemption, though, came from his willingness to listen to what God has to say. Eli disappears. This is a piece I want all of us to hear today. Eli, the servant of God, the boss, the master of Samuel, disappears gracefully into the background to empower his disciple, his student, Samuel. That is what true leadership looks like. When your time is up, return to the background, to the backdrop, to the backup, the new leader in your midst. I'm sure this has a story that matters to us today. When your time is up, return to the background like Eli to back up, to support the new leader in your midst. This is the direction the Lord gives to his anointed. Others are purely impostors. The one whom God chooses knows when to bow down to God's choices. We are called to be like Samuel. Listen to the voice of God. We are called to be like Eli, fading into the background to empower the new prophet, the new leader, and the new future. This was the redemption point for the people of Israel, and it should be the same for us. because that's what saved Eli. God is constantly calling us, like he did Samuel, Samuel. He called Samuel and said, Samuel, Samuel, I'm trying to get your attention. I'm trying to find your focus. Some of us fall back to sleep while others wake up and respond. We are afraid of the night and we are tired of the night. We are tired of working through the day, and all that happens in our lives makes us to fall asleep. And we fall asleep. In the middle of that sleep, the Lord calls us and says, Samuel, Samuel, can you hear the charge that I'm giving you? Which category of people do you fall into? Are you falling into the category of those people who are asleep, or are you falling into the category of people who are awake to the voice of God within you? Are you awake to God's voice, or are you asleep to the voice of God? Are you under the grip of a false prophecy, or are you in the quiet darkness listening for the truth the Lord is telling you to speak about? Tomorrow we celebrate the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday in the United States, meaning it is an officially approved holiday because we found some meaning to this man's life, marking the birthday of Martin Luther King as an important day for all the public offices and all of our government to shut down that day to celebrate some legacy that was left behind by a great man. Why? Because he called his fellow citizens to tell the truth and to stand up for what is right. He championed the cause of respect and dignity of all people. He challenged us to get away from the culture of warmongering and injustice. He broke up with his one-time political ally, President Johnson, and paid for the truth with his life. And that's the nation that we are living in. That people who gave up their life to tell the truth. The story of Samuel repeated again. A small village in Kano State in Nigeria decided to change its name to something more pleasant and not embarrassing to the people of this particular town. This little village, what was their name before they changed it to something pleasant? This town was called Area of Idiots. This little town is the Area of Idiots. They changed that name to the Area of Plenty. You might wonder, how in the world did they get that name? The Area of Idiots, gained its initial name about 70 years ago when the people settled close to the river that is named the Idiotic River. Now, it's not clear why that river was named Idiotic River. I can only think of this, that when that river was running or the water was flowing, it must be very erratic. And therefore, erratic behavior came to be known as idiotic behavior. Those who are in Arkansas know about Pig Trail, Highway 23, that leads to Eureka Springs, and that place, the name of that road came from as a pig trail because people thought it's a cow path. Wherever the cow goes, wherever the pig goes, wherever the erratic behavior leads, so does the road leads you. That is how Highway 23 came to get this name of Pig Trail, the cow path. Erratic behavior makes us idiotic people. End of the story. Let us not become the people who came from the area of idiots, because we are unwilling to listen to the voice of God, and therefore we lack wisdom. Let us not forget who we are, because we are prophets called to hear the truth and tell it, even if it is in the middle of the night. Meaning to say, even when we go through dark moments of our lives. In the story of Samuel, we heard God spoke to him in the middle of the night, at night while he was trying to go to sleep. We don't have a positive view of the nights because at darkness, some people are afraid. Darkness is not a place where we consider safety, where we are safe. And in the dark night, to walk through without light is scary for a lot of people. For children, they are afraid of monsters. I was afraid of thieves. And so in the dark, we are afraid of things that are unknown to us, those things that are not familiar to us. But darkness, after all, is not a bad thing. Before the creation, everything was dark and void. From that void, God created everything. In the darkness is when we rest and sleep and rejuvenate and renew our body and our mind. It is the dark, our bodies and our minds. In the darkness, our bodies and our mind rest when we fall asleep. Darkness, after all, is not a bad thing. It is a perspective. It is a contrast of the light. So, in the darkness, sometimes we lose faith and we lose hope. But it is in the middle of crisis in life we find both hope and faith. And so we can say the dark moments simply is a contrast to the light, not a bad thing to go through if our hearts need to be rested. There was a dark moment in our nation's history that will never be forgotten. It will be remembered for hundreds of years after us, and that happened a week ago, Wednesday. Every one of us should recognize the darkness that enveloped our nation, and we watched with horror that evening. But late into the night, the Senate deliberated. One member of the body forcefully conveyed the message that the only response to the condition of our times is to tell the truth. And there was a round of applause. Without partisan breakups, without any kind of differences, people clapped to hear the truth. The message that only responds to the condition of our times is to tell the truth, and that is called prophecy. And that's called growing up to be Samuel, to tell the truth to Eli. Tell the truth to Eli. It is time for him to change his ways and do the right thing for God. Telling the truth could cost Samuel everything, but it is God who called Samuel to tell the truth. It was for Eli to listen to the truth and do something about it. It was necessary for everyone to be present and honest to understand God. How do we do that? This is where the story of Nathanael in the gospel makes sense to us today, and it is so relevant to us today. And this is what was told to Nathanael: come and see. Find the truth. Tell the truth. Live the truth. Come and see Jesus. Walk with Jesus. Talk with Jesus. Be with Jesus. Listen to Jesus. Don't take another man for Jesus. Don't take another man for Jesus or for a prophet, because there ain't one. Come and see. That's what Jesus says. I want to thank you for being here this morning and listening to this reflection on 1 Samuel as he was called and to ask to tell the truth to his boss, Eli. Healing begins when we tell the truth. Amen. And thank you. Have a wonderful day. God watches over you.